Howdy! Welcome to Aspire Mountain Academy. I'm Professor Curtis, your instructor for this course in Introductory Statistics. In less than 10 minutes, this video demonstrates the 3 different ways to calculate probability with the binomial distribution. Let's get started. To demonstrate the first method, we're going to look at an example problem involving Twitter. Suppose a survey reports an 85% chance that a randomly selected adult knows what Twitter is. What is the probability that exactly 3 of 5 randomly selected adults know what Twitter is? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is define what success is. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, it's easiest to define success with the way that the question's being asked. So here the question's being asked as to, what's the probability that so many people know what Twitter is? So we're going to use that to define our success. Success is knowing what Twitter is. Second, we're going to define our variables. So the equation that we saw earlier that defines the binomial distribution, there are different variables in that equation. So we need to find what those values are for each of the different variables. So we have the number of trials, and that's going to be 5. So because it says in the problem statement, we're randomly selecting 5 adults. And the number of successes is going to be 3, because we want the probability that exactly 3 of those 5 know what Twitter is. In other words, exactly 3 of those 5 have success. The probability of success is going to be 85%. We get that from the problem statement. And of course, if the probability of success is 85%, the probability of failure must be 15%. All we're doing to get the value of Q is just subtracting P from 1. So 1 minus 0.85 gives us the 0.15 or 15% chance of failure. Now we've got all of this defined, we can calculate our probability. So here's our equation that defines the binomial distribution. We plug in the values that we have, and then from here it's just churning out the numbers. And when we do that, we get 0.138. This then is the probability that exactly 3 of 5 randomly selected people know what Twitter is. The second way to get at our actual probability with the binomial distribution is to use a table. Most probability distributions have tables like the one that you see here. So instead of using that obnoxious equation every time we need to calculate a probability, many of the common probabilities have already been calculated for us and put into a table form. So knowing how to use the table, we can get the number we need without having to run through the calculation. This makes getting the probability more convenient. So let's assume we have a procedure that yields a binomial distribution with 5 trials and 45% probability of success. We want to use the table to find the probability that the number of successes is exactly 3. So the way we use the table is like this. First thing we need to do is find the section on the table for the number of trials we have. So how many trials do we have? From our problem statement, we see we have 5 trials. So what that means is we need to look for the 5 here, because this is, if you see the column heading up top, see how this is the n, this is the number of trials. So we look for the section with the 5. So that's going to be this entire section of numbers here. So the probability we're looking for is somewhere within this section. Now, how do we narrow it down further? Well, that gives us to the next step, which is to find the row for the number of successes. So next to that 5, you see you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your random variable. We know from our problem statement that we're asked to find the probability for the number of successes that's exactly 3. We want exactly 3 successes. So we find the row that corresponds with the number 3, and that's listed here. So now we've got the probability we're looking for somewhere on this row. But which of the columns is it that we want to choose? That's going to be the next step. We find the column with the probability of success. Notice the headings up at the top of the table. Okay, this is your P, which is your probability of success. So we just find the column that's headed with the probability of success that we're looking for, and that gives us the column that we need. So 45% probability from our problem statement is going to be right here. So now the probability that we're looking for is going to be at the intersection of the row and the column of interest. So that intersection marks the value that we're interested in. So 0.276, where that row and column intersect each other, that's going to be our probability. So the probability of getting exactly 3 successes among 5 trials is going to be 0.276. And that's all there is to using the table. Again, a lot easier once you get the hang of it, a lot easier than using that obnoxious equation. Of course, an even easier way to get at the answer is to use Statcrunch. So inside Statcrunch, if you go to Stat Calculator's Binomial, you can get a binomial calculator and you can just enter your parameters in there and press compute, and out comes everything you need. So here's the result windows that appear. This is the binomial calculator in Statcrunch. And we can just put in our parameters and get the same number out, the 0.276. So here we've got the 5 trials, 45% chance of success. We want exactly 3. Put all that in, press compute, and out comes our probability, which you see is the same number there that we got from the table. And that brings us to the end of this mini lecture. I hope you found it helpful. You can find more mini lectures for this and other courses at AspireMountainAcademy.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.